Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Unily Podcast. It's been a bit of a break. This is the first podcast of 2022. Excited to be back and with a host of fresh new faces, to come and talk to us today and share their insights with all of our wonderful listeners. If you are joining for the first kind of time this year, whether you've been on one of our early webinars or you're joining the podcast for the first time this year, welcome and happy new year to you. If I can still say that so close to the end of January. On today's podcast, I'm joined by a number of people. Let's start first and foremost with Glenn, returning podcast champion, Glenn Chambers, Senior VP of Sales at Unily. How are you doing, Glenn?
I'm doing good. I'm at the tail end of COVID, so I got tested on Monday, positive, so that's been a bit of a bummer. Looking forward to getting over that and getting out, but generally, yeah, I'm fantastic and excited to get this started again.
Good. Well, we're very glad to hear that. And we're joined now, correct me if I'm wrong, Leslie, but this is your first time on the Unily Podcast?
This is my first podcast.
Amazing.
Happy to join.
It's so good to have you with us. I know. Long-standing Unily high flyer, Leslie. You are the consulting implementation lead in the US. So Can you tell us what that means in terms of your job at Unily?
Yeah, so I lead a team of our consultants who work on implementations and additional projects with all our clients. So we're kind of the first touch point after sales. We get the client onboarded, leveraging all of Unily and everything that Unily has to offer, and then we get to pass them over to Shavaz's team, so the CSM team. But then we do have clients coming back to us for other implementations. And with all the new features that I know we're going to talk about some of those today, we get to go back to clients and help them implement those new features as well. So really fun to kind of work with a variety of different clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of like a lot of context switching, kind of project mode. Very cool. And what about you? How was your Christmas break? You have some good downtime out in the US?
I did. It was a white Christmas here, which is not usual for Seattle.
Lovely.
Yeah. It was very different, but very beautiful. And it was nice just to be with family and get to hang out.
That's good. So good. Glad you had good downtime. And of course, welcome to the podcast. I'm sure we'll have you on many times. Well, depending upon your performance today, I've got a scorecard here. I'm tallying points.
Oh, we'll see. And likes on YouTube, right? Do we?
Of course, our 7 watchers will be voting furiously on who they want to see come back for the next episode of 2022 Unily Podcast. Speaking of contenders for that second invite, we've got Shavaz, first time Senior Customer Success Manager at Unily. Welcome. Great to have you with us as well today. How are you doing?
I'm well, Matthew. How are you?
Good. I'm glad I've got somebody who's such a seasoned presenter as yourself, having done I've seen you present internally for the business, so I know that you've got this in the bag, maybe.
Hopefully.
No pressure.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
pressure now. Yeah, exactly. But fantastic to have you with us. Good Christmas break?
Absolutely. It was very restful. Did lots of reading and saw some family members and, cooking and enjoying just that kind of time and being slowed down a little bit. And I'm in New York, so it's fantastic to see the lights and how the city just really, really amps up for the holiday season. So I absolutely loved it.
I've been to New York once at Christmas time, and I have to say about the lights, it's incredible. The city is just absolutely so cool. My most recent trip actually was when I was kind of out there around that time. It was so cool. I say recent, of course, in global pandemic terms. That is relative. So recent is several years ago now. The closest I get now is those Christmas films on TV. And last but by no means least, we have Carrie, technical implementation lead. Did I get your job title right?
You did indeed.
I had pressure. First time on the podcast, how are you feeling? Nervous?
A little, but I'm a ham, so I'll make it work.
Good. I'm so glad that you're able to join us today as well, kind of talk a little bit from a technical perspective as well, because, we're going to be talking a lot about technology, so always good to have people like yourself coming in and sharing their perspective. And yeah, just how was your Christmas? Good, like everyone else's? No COVID, fingers crossed?
No COVID, and I was actually able to see my family, which was, a relief because the year before we couldn't. So that was lovely. And I will never stop talking about this. I made my first beef Wellington and a gluten-free one at that, and it was good. And you'll all hear about it multiple times.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, coming from
delicious.
a man who struggles to cook pasta,
Making me
I am
hungry already.
mightily impressed at a beef Wellington effort. That is amazing. Cool. Well, glad you're all doing well. Back at it, January 2022 after a nice downtime. And for Glenn, bouncing back from COVID, happy to have you all with us. Turning our attention to the future now, we're here today because as we roll into 2022, we are, coming into a new year and a raft of new changes for the working world. We've been experiencing them steadily, of course, during the global pandemic with, big lockdowns and inability to travel, new kind of digital work processes. But obviously, we're coming into 2022 and we need to start thinking about how this change is going to continue within organizations. And we wanted to get experts like yourself in here to share your insights really on what trends you think are going to shape the working world in 2022. Shavaz, I see you nodding away, wisely there. So I'm going to come to you first. Can you, lead us in? What do you think is going to be one of the most significant trends for working practices in 2022? Care to throw something out there?
Absolutely. I strongly feel that in 2022 and really going forward, because of the way that business itself has changed globally, that the employee voice is going to be central. Very, very key for leaders to not just listen to, but also action the insight that their employees are giving. And one of the things that I'm working with, even with my customers, sorry to take it directly there, but it's just something that's always close to my heart, is looking at kind of the comments that your employees are posting, reading and seeing what that employee sentiment is. Because right now, I think a lot of people, because of our kind of Zoom fatigue, as we call it, are still searching for human connection. And so when people can find that human connection in the place that they work, then of course the organization thrives, then they're happy at work. And so I think that going forward, not just in 2022, but really beyond, I think hybrid work and remote work, working from anywhere, I do think that's here to stay. And because of that, I think that the employee voice, hearing people's voices, whether they are working from a shared office space or in their living room, in their basement, or let's say they just wanted to go to the Bahamas or Tahiti and work from there. All of those voices are...
That's the dream right there. Take me to Tahiti.
It's actually funny. I got a marketing email. I think it was from Turks and Caicos, and the email was saying, remote work is now a thing. Consider doing it from our beautiful beaches.
Wow. Hey,
Doesn't sound bad.
I was going to say, seize the opportunities presented to you.
I've seen the same in Costa Rica as well, that they're really pushing that and kind of those sort of shared workspaces. Mm-hmm. And I have a friend who's a freelance copywriter that she's basically traveled the world as she did her job, and she travels with a whole pod of people kind of that, their paths will cross back and forth between these shared workspaces. Mm-hmm. So she traveled in South Asia the entire time she was working, and awesome. Also took cooking lessons and learned how to do Thai massage. It was amazing.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
I would say also the other reason why I feel that the employee voice is so important is because I think that the pandemic didn't necessarily bring up new issues. I think it revealed issues that were already underlying, and then it accelerated the progress of technology, of people's concern regarding things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, social justice, all of those things. So that's those are other kind of contributing reasons to answer your question, Matt, as to why I think that employee voice is going to be crucial and really going to be the compass going forward into 2022 and beyond regarding the future of work.
That's really interesting. Okay, so let's put you on the spot now. How often do you exercise your employee voice internally? I'm interested to know, like, because we have quite open social communities. So do you kind of how active are you?
Internally, I participate on the culture team. I participate on the diversity, equity, inclusion team. I also, am a very, very strong advocate for my customers. So whether it's raising my voice to senior leadership or product, I think I reached out to you, maybe in December or something to, just get your thoughts on some things. So I think employee voice isn't always just, a megaphone, but it can also be the qualitative aspects of conversations that are going on internally as well. So I feel like I exercise my own employee voice a lot.
That's good. That's good.
Well, yeah. And it's interesting because I think that when employees feel safe in their environment, they do, open up to express their voice more. And I think that really is one of the catalysts to creativity and innovation. So, yeah.
So, on that topic of kind of exercising your voice, I'm interested to know as well. You talked about kind of advocating on behalf of your customers. That's really interesting because I guess, being as part of our customer success team, you probably have quite a deep insight into how this is, becoming more important within their businesses as well, right?
Absolutely. I recall last year, I had a meeting scheduled to go over one particular subject matter, and I believe it was the CHRO of this particular customer's organization. Her first question, within 60 seconds of the call starting, was, Shabazz, how can Unily help us with our DE&I initiatives? So these topics are top of mind for our customers, and by leveraging a lot of different tools and functions in our platform, I have one customer who their CEO was making videos of saying, hey, this is me in my living room. I'm working remotely with you guys as well. So nice. Yeah, all of these things are top of mind for senior stakeholders at the C level, because it is impacting their workforce. It is, it is the employee voice, but I think it's also the leadership voice as well, because we've all been affected by it, regardless our title, regardless our socioeconomic condition, regardless our geographic location. We've all been impacted. So I think the employee voice is not just the employees, but it's also leadership, and it's everywhere.
Yeah,
I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So do you know what, actually, Leslie, you've just popped up big on the screen for me now, so I'm coming straight to you. So perhaps just before you kind of share a key trend with us, could you give advice to people who feel less confident exercising their employee voice in the workplace?
Well, from a client perspective,
put you on the spot there.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Away,
from a client perspective, I think the culture is shifting a lot. We used to get implementation projects where we would talk about the employee voice, where we would kind of start talking about that two-way communication and what Unily can offer in terms of, social commenting and providing feedback and making sure that they have the opportunity to kind of share their opinions. And I think there was some hesitancy from clients to kind of open that up. Oh, we've never done that before, or we don't have this currently. We're worried about the type of feedback that we're going to get. How can we kind of mitigate that risk? And I think that more and more in the implementations that we've recently seen, while that sentiment does still exist somewhat, I think people are more open to kind of have those conversations and having a mix of culture channels, having a mix of product and company channels, and having a mix of fun channels to kind of fill that water cooler space that used to exist, and that connection that employees had. One of my favorite recommendations to clients, because I always think it's fun, and I know we do it too, and we've shared pets of. The pets of channel is always a popular one to kind of get people used to commenting and contributing, tagging and mentioning people on their social comments. So I think that's one that people really take to. And then it's just about navigating how they facilitate those conversations. how they respond, and they have to respond because we're all used to, one of the trends that we've seen too is we're all used to that kind of consumer level interaction that we expect. And so I think companies too have to mirror that in their internal digital tools, responding, reacting, and, taking that feedback and actioning it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I agree, Leslie. I think that the consumerization of the employee experience is really a lot of the kind of deciding factors, I think, for key stakeholders. And that's where I think a lot of analytics come in as well. So I'm very glad that you touched on that. Yeah, I completely agree.
So go on after you, Carrie, please.
Oh, just, kind of on the technical side of that too, I really, that connection with the consumer level of it is one of the things I've, because I'm fairly new to Unily, but previous to that, I was a SharePoint and Office 365 consultant. And one of the biggest challenges was getting people to say tag documents or even understanding what that is. And then when you can translate that to you tag on Instagram, same, because you want to be able to, one, see your posts and also have other people find them easily and trend. So to give them a platform that feels familiar, you're going to get a lot better information out of your user community with what they're posting, be it social or be it documents.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting. I think, okay, so Glenn, for example, earlier today, I posted an idea. You were in there, posted your thoughts and opinions openly straight away. And luckily, you liked my idea, so thank you very much.
Good idea.
He wouldn't have brought it up as an example if not.
Yeah, if you hadn't liked it, then I definitely would not have mentioned it. That is for sure. But, for me, you're one of those people who's, very, well, as a perception, you seem very confident and comfortable sharing your opinion in these kind of public spaces. Either within our business or even on LinkedIn and places like that. I always kind of half write a message on places like LinkedIn and even potentially sometimes internally and then delete it and think, no, I don't know what people will think of my opinion. So I wipe it out and I shy away from it. Could you give any advice about, sharing ideas in those internal forums?
I think you just got to make sure that you provide value. I do the same thing. You write something and then you're like, you check yourself, is anyone going to find this interesting? What's my angle on it? I think you just got to be bold. It's like most things in life, it's something that feels scary. And then it's something that Shavaz is a LinkedIn guru and I love what you post. You're always, because you read a lot, I see him as my book summarizer, because he reads all this stuff and then posts quotes or insights that I like to pick up on. So no, I think it's, and again, Shavaz is a good example of this. I think if you just do it and start doing it and it becomes a habit, right? So I think you can apply that to the internal side of things. It's a chance to be heard, right? You had that idea. I love the idea. Obviously, my motives are around that specific idea would help me in sales. Right, because customers would love it, and the more customers we can attract, the better. So
you hear it first from prospects.
Yeah,
I do,
out on the front line. And so, go on then. Tell us, what are you hearing? What are the trends that you're hearing? So we've heard a little bit about employee voice and how our existing customers are talking about it. But Glenn, what other trends are you hearing from all the various different companies you get to speak to week in, week out?
Well, one of the things I just want to start with is to pick up on the employee voice. That is 100%, a key trend. And I think that what I've noticed is there's a lot more, because everyone's working remotely, right? It's not going away. Internal comms is not that it was never, important. It's even more important. And right now, what I feel like I'm hearing is that the internal comms teams haven't grown with the rate of work that's sort of being thrust upon them now. So they are being asked to do a lot more, because previously, they had in-person meetings and you could chat to people, and now everything's done online and they need to get it out, and they use the intranet, the mobile apps, etc. as the method to do that. So I think that the workload I've definitely noticed the workload increasing. So the trend, I think, will be, and what internal comms and corp comms and corporate affairs, I've noticed is help. We need help with that. We need, how can you help us do more with less, right? And one of the examples, I'll say you did a great webinar yesterday about our engagement automation capabilities. I think, ways to make comms intelligent, right? So about mapping out what you want to communicate, creating that campaign, automating it. That means that person can, or that team can set it, they can forget it, and they can do more with less. So I definitely see that as a trend. But then more widely, automation more widely, AI and machine learning. I think people ask for that all the time. I don't think everybody who asks for it really knows what it means. But it's always a buzzword that comes out. Consolidation now. I think that if we go back, the pandemic really started in late 2019, right? So early 2020, you had companies and IT departments just throwing money, right? We need a way to communicate. Let's buy this tool. Let's do this. And I think now you've got this situation where IT, we're going from reactive to proactive. Maybe they asked for all this budget. They didn't quite get everything they wanted. So they're now looking at, the 5 different tools they had and saying, well, maybe we can we sort of consolidate that? Well, but why would you have a separate tool for news, for forms, for quizzes, for surveys, for mobile, for analytics, for employee recognition, for digital?
For emails.
You can go on. Right. Yeah, for email newsletters. So definitely an interest in collapsing, not every tool into one, but maybe if you've got 5, if you can reduce it to 2 or to 3. And one final one, because I could talk all day, and I will if you let me. But the last one I think is around with the shift to, everyone's been working remote. It's not really a shift, but so much comms is going out to employees, and I think that they are sort of being bombarded from all these different systems in all different, push notifications, online notifications, emails. So definitely seeing some noise around wanting to protect. How do you, in the sea of noise, how do you make the priority stuff stand out?
Yeah, it's kind of like not connected up. And I think Gartner talk about, what they call digital friction and the context switching, which is certainly not helpful when it's all, say, communications, but you have to go to 3 different places to get it. So much to unpack in that. One thing I want to hop onto straight away, reminder for myself, I want to come back to internal communications talent, because I think that's really interesting point you said about the need to grow internal comms teams. But first I want to throw it over to Carrie, because I saw you nodding along sagely when Glenn mentioned around artificial intelligence, machine learning. We do often hear about this, and coming from the technical side of employee experience platform implementation, what can you tell us? What are the insights?
Well, what I really nodded to when Glenn was like, a lot of people, it's a buzzword, but they don't actually understand what it does. And it can be very powerful and it can increase productivity. But at the same time, you have to understand you still need a strategy. You need, like say you're using AI for, document management purposes. For example, the single most important thing you can do in any intranet is tagging your documents correctly and having standardized tags for people to use. And very few people actually do that. So great, we'll use AI for that. Okay, but you still have to figure out what you want things tagged as. You need to, what you want to surface, what's important to your users, and then also a governance strategy around it. Because I again, in commercial products, we're all subject to a lot of AI algorithms, and some are good, some aren't, some change. I have no idea why Netflix keeps recommending me rom-coms when my favorite movie's The Raid.
Secret rom-com fan over here. I know it. She's giving herself away.
And so you still need to govern that process and make sure that it's doing what you want it to do, to create some rules for it to learn from, and also understand what you want to see out of it, because it'll help with the analytics, but what are the analytics you actually want to see? It could be just providing more noise of a lot of analytics that maybe your organization doesn't care about. So, I'm very excited about AI, particularly for self-help processes with HR, of using a chatbot and saying, what are our holidays off? And that providing that and not maybe having to go through the entire search experience. But you still have to understand the trends in your organization. What are the questions that those users ask most? And behind the AI, then ramping, those up for more common results. The AI will eventually learn from that, but especially in the beginning, and one of the other user adoption of these systems and these technologies. A lot of people, if they have trouble with it at the very beginning, they never go back to it. And with AI, it's all about how it learns. So in the beginning, it often is not so smooth. And so you really need to communicate that and, again, have strategies in place before you even implement it.
Yeah, Sorry, go on, Glenn. Go on.
To kind of connect that to something that it's all right.
I thought it was Glenn.
No problem. But to connect something that you were saying, Carrie, to what Glenn was saying is kind of a question, but also something that I've also worked on with my customers is, can't we use AI and machine learning to also reduce all of the notification fatigue and the overwhelming of articles by really leveraging AI and machine learning to personalize the experience? Even kind of as Leslie was talking about with like kind of the consumerized employee experience, I think that AI and machine learning can really be used to ensure that the employee experience is a lot more personalized to their role, maybe their geographic location as well. So I think everything you're saying is correct. But have you, and maybe Leslie, this is for you as well, have you all in the implementation team? Sorry, man, I'm asking questions and you're the host.
Hey, man, the more you do, the less I have to do. So this is a win for me. Crack on.
Yeah. Have you, Carrie and Leslie, have you all worked with any customers early on in the process to really, really kind of maximize that personalized experience for employees using AI and machine learning that is already existing in our platform?
From an implementation perspective, I think the trends that I see, at least with the clients that I've worked with, is they want to start with our targeting approach. So they want to have that push based on, what they initially think is appropriate for a person's role, a person's department, a person's location, whatever kind of profile information that they have. And then I think they layer on that personalization and that feature that we have as a way in certain areas to kind of drive interest in the kind of content that they're putting out there. And so I think it's a balance, and they want to do both that push and pull strategy to make sure that people see what is relevant to them and feel that the digital workplace is something really that has been built for them. And so that's always the lens that we look at, is what's in it for me as an end user. That's what we care about. That's what we need to build.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. And I think a really important lesson that we all took away from Carrie's point earlier as well. One is, I always imagine for the kind of unmanaged AI where you're trying to kind of speed up people finding things, and then you're not really checking how that chatbot, for example, is performing. They ask, oh, do you have information on process improvement? The robot says no very quickly. And then you have no idea that you don't have the content, you're not providing it, and the chatbot may have been fast to give the response, but is actually providing value. So I couldn't agree more. I think, managing those AI services is important in terms of performance and the value they bring to your users. And another key learning as well is it's very important to govern who has access to your Netflix credentials. You're going to get lots of rom-com recommendations too. But that doesn't really lead me on to this point, but this is where I'm going next, because I really liked it, which was Glenn's point about internal comms. Absolutely been a huge focus, massive increase in pressure, I would argue, on internal communicators. So many more critical messages to get out to so many more people, including the frontline, which would be another cool topic to dig into if we have time. But I think that one of the things that seems to be rising in importance as well, according to the latest analyst research, is this battleground for top talent. So we talk about employee experience platforms, these digital experiences, and how consumer grade experiences within the business is really how you're going to bring in the top, young and up and coming talent who are going to have me out of a job. And you bring them in by giving them the kind of consumer technology that they are used to using outside the workplace. So you've got this increasing need to get internal communicators on board who are in many cases responsible for the employee experience platform. But you also have this battle now for internal communication talent because, Glenn, you think that there's going to be a need to increase team size? Is that would that be fair?
First of all, I want to say there's nothing wrong with older talent.
Thank you.
I could not agree more.
Mature, experienced, level-headed.
Yeah. All right.
Like a fine wine.
It's wine, not grape juice, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think teams are going to have to increase for sure because there's more work to be done. But I think where Intranet, we can't help people. Well, we can. We're not really in the recruitment game, right? We can help attract talent, by offering great solutions and positioning the company in a good way. But it's more about helping them in this transition phase do more with less through the making the, if you can create content and target it in the right way and get it done in minutes, then they can get back to doing other. Because the hard bit about internal comms is actually probably coming up with the topics and drafting the content, right? The publishing bit should be the easy bit.
Yeah. And it is. And I think too, sometimes some of the guidance that we give clients in that kind of concern is, and it depends on the culture and it depends on what they feel comfortable with. But I think employee generated content is a really great way to kind of help facilitate additional content coming in the pipeline. People love to see what they write and what they contribute. And so if you can open that up and kind of spread out that work with employee generated content, that helps.
And that sorry, Carrie, go on.
Oh, sorry. And one of the things I saw come up over and over again in a lot of articles about, these trends is not only attracting the talent, but retaining it. And one of the challenges in retaining it is, as, Shabazz mentioned, with all this remote work, we don't quite have the community that naturally pops up in an in-office environment. And, when I started at Unily last year, I'm going to give a little shout out to our platform, but also how we use our platform internally. We use our platform with this get to know a rock star. So everybody who starts, they fill out, and it's fun questions and a little, bit about them. So immediately I already started to know my coworkers, and we used the social features around that. People commented on it. And, the employee generated channel where we all post our travel pictures because we all had pandemic, fatigue and go, oh, I know somebody who runs a hotel there. Tell me next time you go there. And so we have a better sense of community. And when, one of the trends is people have been moving jobs quite a bit because they don't have that emotional attachment to their coworkers and that community anymore. And I think, those internal comms and, like Leslie said, the employee generated content that's not just, and this is how we do this, or, okay, this is the time we were all going to get together and get to know each other, less formalized approaches like that, I found very effective coming here.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that, Carrie. And that's one of the reasons why I love, even our communications homepage, which Matt could probably speak to better than I can, with, just to look at different, what are the popular stories that people are reading and all of that. And then one of the other things we did internally, Carrie, and I don't recall if you were part of this, but what we did to really get to know each other that I really loved was we did an event here in the U.S. that we called Rocking with Rock Stars, and it was like a speed dating, get to know each other kind of.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was. I don't know if Leslie, were you there as well? Yeah, it was such a blast because it was we just spent 3 to 4 minutes with a group of people, and we did 2 truths and a lie, and a lot of just fun stuff to get to know each other as we were all working remotely. So I think it's awesome to, like Carrie was saying, start at a company, fill out a questionnaire of things to just get to know each other, because in my opinion, I don't think that trust is really built just out of the meetings, but I think that trust in that relationship is really built between the meetings, like reaching out to Leslie and saying, hey, can you help? Which of course Leslie knows I've reached out to her 10,000 times for questions and answers. But like, that's when you really develop those connections when you're working remotely. It's not in the meeting agenda, but it's what's happening, between the meetings. So Carrie, I love that was beneficial to you when you first started.
Yeah.
And it still is.
Awesome.
It continues to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Shavaz, I was going to say as well, that kind of almost brought us full circle. So we talked about user-generated content. And of course, when we were talking at the start, we talked about being able to exercise the employee voice. And I guess that is, one way, a slightly more long-form way where you can express your opinions, within the business. And actually, some of the... I don't want to diminish the work-related content that I read on a day-to-day basis, but some of the really interesting articles come out of the blue about cultural things that people share, about cultures that I know very little about, and it's so interesting for people to kind of share a little bit of that, with the rest of the business. And it isn't necessarily directly related to work, but I certainly remember reading it. And it was, it was exciting, it was interesting, and also it comes from a personal context, because I know the person who writes the story, and that helps those messages hit home and land a little bit more deeply, I would argue.
Yeah.
So
I'd even say though, Matt, whether or not you know the person, when you read those kind of more personal articles, in my opinion, those are very subtle ways to break down silos. Like when I've read an article by somebody who I didn't know, I feel that personal connection. I'm more prone to reach out to them, across departments and say, hey, let's have a 15-minute coffee chat and learn more about what they do, or ask them a question if something comes up, because I've read their article and I feel a little bit more connected to them. So I think you're definitely right, but definitely I think for me at least, it's allowed me to feel like the silo lines aren't as definitive, and I can reach out.
So I guess then, here's a contentious point, because I'm, completely agree. Employee voice, incredibly important. So do we think I'm going to ask Glenn this question. Glenn, do you think in 2022, frontline workers will have the same opportunity to exercise the employee voice? My personal opinion is that prior to 2022, they haven't necessarily always been afforded the same opportunity to express their voice in kind of digital forums, or maybe connect as deeply with the business. Is 2022 the year that changes?
I'd like to think so. Maybe I want to say something controversial here. I think when I'm talking on the front line in the sales capacity, companies are much more comfortable with giving desk-based workers, information workers, knowledge workers, access to post and comment.
Yeah.
They're much less likely and less comfortable to do it with frontline. Not all frontline, but people that maybe in a call center, right? They don't want them on that. They want them focused on picking up calls, right? So that's not a focus, it's a productivity thing. And then maybe in sort of retail or logistics or manufacturing, maybe the turnover rate is just a lot higher. So they're a bit more scared about, we go through the whole thing, like, well, nobody's going to fire themselves on the job. When you post a comment, right, it's got your name on it.
Goes with your name, yeah.
Right. And we have like certain level of controls around what you can and can't post in terms of prohibited words and what have you. But certainly, I think we'll see more of that. I think they're much more likely to enable reactions. So, it's one toe in the water when it comes to social and feedback, and you can... it's a better judge of how articles are being received. I think that commenting, hopefully will come. I mean, they don't, maybe in a smaller setting, like if you've got a department, then turning on commenting within that team, sure. But they're a bit scared about the whole company.
That's interesting, because you talked there about, potentially an increased focus on productivity for frontline workers who have specific numbers or values that they've got to hit. But Gallup research reported 18% lower productivity in disengaged frontline staff. So arguably, you could give them 10% of their working day to be social and engaging in kind of commentary and messaging in a social platform for the workplace, and still make an 8% gain on productivity, if my very poor maths is accurate there. So, you know, maybe there is a stronger case this year that, you know, now that we're better at proving engagement, because, you know, obviously the analytics piece is always a bone of contention. What is engagement?
Well, one thing that may push it, though, is the Great Resignation, right? I mean, there's a huge cost to this constant turnover. So if they can... And if you're not allowed to do anything, how are you going to get trust in the company? How are you going to feel valued? How are you going to feel that sense of connection that people on this podcast have been talking about?
I mean, or if you're not... If you're not even brought into the digital workplace to begin with. And I think that's one of the trends that we're seeing too, is the onboarding experience and bringing people in from the very beginning.
And I
making sure that they're aware.
I have a success story, actually, Glenn, to your point, of a frontline worker that was given access to leave comments. And with one of my customers, they made a comment that was, you know, why is this process going this way? Why are we, you know, not being efficient in this way? Well, this particular customer had a CEO that was very active in reviewing the comments, and he looked at that and he thought, you know what, I think that frontline worker has a point. He reviewed the processes and then overhauled how they were going about a lot of those processes to make it more efficient, of course, saving both time and costs. So I think that there are a lot of benefits, but yeah, of course, I agree with everything you said, that sometimes companies may, you know, hesitate before giving frontline workers that much access to leave comments. But in this situation, it really ended up being for the good of the company that frontline worker highlighted that inefficiency. And because of an engaged leadership, they were able to make some corrections to increase efficiencies within the whole business. So.
And that's interesting because that's what Will, our CEO, said at Unite in 2021. Last year now. He said, you know, it's an interesting kind of scenario that you have frontline workers who are the closest people to your customers, right? They know your customers the most intimately because they serve them every day. They see the bits that they like and that they don't like, but then we often don't give them the mechanism by which they can provide that feedback into the business and proactively go about, introducing change, basically, for a better customer experience. So, an interesting situation.
And I think also in concert with that is, providing kudos for comments, for, the personal voice and the way we can gamify that as well, where you have a leaderboard of people have gotten these many kudos or these many likes, that also helps determine a bit, because we're all remote, sometimes it's hard to know what your actual corporate culture is. So when you you might be shy about commenting on a process, and think, the manager of that team going to come down on me. But if you see a lot of other people, maybe higher up or whatever, that are also commenting on those things, and you see a lot of likes and a lot of discourse around it, that's going to encourage, I think, more of that, employee voice, and particularly from frontline workers. Because I know when I did consulting for companies, when I was designing processes for them, I was like, well, I need to go talk to your people in the field as well. What do they do? Because what works for you at your desk does not necessarily work for somebody who is, in a wind farm somewhere on a phone. So
no, absolutely. And I think that kind of piece that you mentioned there about the kind of recognition side of things and the employee voice, now more than ever in 2022, we know that hybrid work and working from home, kind of even, full time, is going to continue to be a mainstay experience for many people. So I think the kind of things you're talking to there, employee voice, and rewarding and recognizing those people who kind of embody your values or kind of go above and beyond, that all kind of will become the culture of your business. You can't now fall back on, and it's a bit of a trap, really. You want to have a great company culture, so you do things like invest in office spaces. You give people pool tables and old school arcade games and beer on tap, and you're like, that will show that we really care about people because we've given them things that are nice, that they like, and that will contribute to a happier, more positive culture, more positive interactions between our people. And it's been a bit of a trap, because then afterwards, of course, all these really cool, lovely office spaces that we created have become redundant, and many organizations have to redefine that culture in a real way. In a digital medium, the employee experience platform, the intranet, is the home of your digital culture, and all you really have there are the actions that people take. Do you take that 2 minutes to recognize a colleague who really helped you solve a problem? Do you have 5 minutes to give your feedback to the business on an internal initiative, or to comment on an article in a positive way? All of those small actions are now going to build up that big picture of what your culture really is. And it's, but I think personally, we talked a lot about some of the challenges we're going to face in 2022, but I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, Glenn, you're out there speaking to all the organizations who are probably looking at these, staring down the barrel of these changes and saying, okay, how do we fix this? Right. Do you think they're recognizing the opportunity?
I think so. I posted something on LinkedIn earlier this week that I thought was interesting, that ties into your comment, from the American Express CEO, who said that although consumer travel spending is back to pre-pandemic levels, business travel is at 33% of what it was. And he said he sees a future where people go in the office 2, 3, 4, 5 times a year, right? So to your point, there potentially must be a lot of budget out there which was previously used for corporate travel, which may not, it may equal out if you get people into the office for a big bash, a few more times a year. Yeah. Physical office space, maybe, don't renew some of those leases and apply those funds towards the digital employee experience instead. But yeah, I think that they're recognizing the opportunities. At the same time, I talked about doing more with less. I think that there was probably, it's well documented, there was a surge of spending 2021, 2022. I do see at the same time as increasing spend on employee experience, there's also going to be a bit of a, the CEO is probably going to be going, this is all great, but we've got to try and, do a bit more with less budget. We can't keep opening up the taps all the time now. Hopefully, we're in the tail end of the pandemic. We never know, but it looks like it's hopefully getting a little bit better.
Hopefully.
I'm sure we all have our fingers crossed for that. And for those organizations who are with us today who rent office space, we love you. You're awesome. I'm sure offices will still have a new role to play in the hybrid work scenario. But yeah, no, I saw that comment that you shared on LinkedIn, and I did think it was an incredibly interesting insight. How do you reassign or realign the previous budgets that were spent in other ways? And I think the digital forum, digital assets that organizations would take advantage of isn't an obvious place to start, hopefully for many. And I think, and actually, Leslie, perhaps you can comment on this, from an implementation perspective. I feel like, many organizations didn't have something in place. So, did you feel there was like an increased rush to get something out fast from the people that you were implementing, as the pandemic was kind of happening? Is it crazy kind of we need something out now?
Absolutely. We are very busy, and there hasn't been kind of a lull in customers wanting to come and, implement something. We've seen a mix of people having something, but something that wasn't good enough, or something that didn't really fit the bill, or didn't have the capabilities that they wanted to expand in kind of their digital toolbox. And then we've seen companies who have had nothing and have recognized a need to kind of have something there, start with something, iterate on something, and build a platform where they can actually help employees communicate, understand the business, and onboard. I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm really excited to see and help implement is leveraging engagement automation for that onboarding, that digital onboarding experience. I've been now onboarding team members remotely for, the whole time that I've been the functional lead on the consulting side. And there's a lot that I think can be done.
Yeah, to kind of like smooth that transition into the business and help people kind of,
absolutely
get to grips with all different tools and systems. And I guess there's more systems now than ever because, we're buying more technology to solve more of the problems that maybe a whiteboard did before in shared office spaces. So I guess that makes sense. And I guess then, I know we're running up against the clock, but there's one topic that I really want to just dig into very briefly. And actually, anyone jump in on this one. How important do you think, the kind of integration aspect is going to be of all these tools? Gartner talk a lot about digital friction and time wasted and productivity lost from context switching. Integration, how important is it? Is it important for MVP? Is it long-term strategic? Anyone hop in with your thoughts and opinions?
I'll jump in. Oh, go on, Carrie, you go.
Yeah, go on, Carrie, you go. Glenn said enough. No.
Yeah.
Glenn can go second.
I mean, for the years I did consulting, one of the things, I could design these beautiful systems for people, and maybe, a third, half the company would love them and use them. The other half or other teams didn't. And, and they just wanted to keep using their tools. And, with experience, you realize there is no one size fits all. But if you can provide something that for all these different teams and the way they all work most productively and pull that in together, and not only that single pane of glass, but also kind of a single point of truth and one-stop shopping to go somewhere to reap the benefits of all the work and all the other systems, I think is huge. And we do it here internally. Again, when I started, we had the social aspects there, but I was easily able to get things from our HR system and from our ServiceNow system all rolled up within our Unily Intranet, because it's those different teams, they have different needs, different ways of working, different culture, right. Even and so that to me is the number one most powerful thing that you can deliver to people. And it allows you to also change those tools, and people still have a familiarity with where they're going. The tools might change, but maybe the way the information is presented doesn't.
Yeah, I would add to that. I was on a call with a customer. I mean, this was maybe in July or August, and he said something that was just so interesting to me, and it sent me on this whole week-long research to see what really is going on with integrations as far as in the industry. And I think where the opportunity lies right now is that because there are so many opportunities for integration, a lot of companies need to have their internal comms team, kind of to touch on what Glenn said, and their IT teams partner in some sort of SaaS management or some sort of governance strategy to ensure that they are looking at what integrations they have, and ensuring that those integrations are still applicable. Because especially I've even noticed with my customers over the past 2 years that, maybe things have changed and we're not going to be using that any longer, because with a remote workforce, we should probably be using this because it's more efficient. And then when you actually look at an app or something, maybe it hasn't been used in a year or two. So I think SaaS management is probably where a lot of things will go in the future, is people will begin to pay more close attention to, is this integration necessary? Which integrations do we need? And how can we maximize the integrations that we already have in our platform and really make those as beneficial to our workforce as possible?
Yeah. From an implementation perspective, I think everyone thinks of integrations in a lot of different ways. First and foremost, the most simple aspect of it is even bringing to light the fact that we have all these tools. And so bringing that single pane of glass and, in what the offering is and communicating out what each tool is used for, I think that's kind of one piece. But I do think that those tools that are the heavy hitters in organizations are the ones that are usually the focus for their minimum viable experience. And then there's road mapping that we do during implementation to say, okay, well, this would come next in terms of integrations. This is what we want to see next. This is what our users have been asking for. And maybe even kind of using that as a way to relaunch their digital workplace and bring people back in.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Glenn, what about you? Integrations, what are you hearing from the front line?
Well, I was going to try and bring a different angle because, I totally agree with what everyone said, especially what Shabazz said about, at the tip of the spear, I call us in sales, we get the RFPs and it just lists every product they have in the organization. Can you integrate with it? There's not really and then when you say, okay, we do integrate with Salesforce, but Salesforce is huge, right? There's 1,000 different integration points, right? Exaggerating a bit, but when you say to the prospect, well, what do you want to do with it? They don't know, right? So there is that side of it is where does the value lie? But what I was speaking to a well-known, respected analyst in the past week, and they said some interesting stuff. They said that another vendor that is far more custom than us, a large enterprise organization, 20 or 30,000 users, I think, picked this vendor, and then they were now unwinding it because of the complexity and how much professional services, and it was much more complex than they imagined, right? So I think that the other trend for 22 is sort of around, tying into doing more with less and simplification. Integrations, no doubt, right, provide value when done the right way, but there needs to be sort of a sort of axis about how much work is it to do it and how much work is it to maintain it versus the value you're going to get. So I'm going to do a little plug for our feature store now, right? That's what people want, is they want the apps like in the phone where you search for an integration, click download, connect it to your system, and then you're using it, right? And someone else is taking care of the sort of maintenance and reliability piece. The other SaaS applications are always updating and changing themselves and updating the API, and it's much easier for Unily to do that on behalf of hundreds of customers than it is for an individual customer to connect these systems in that are questionable usefulness and all the maintenance that goes with it. So that was the only a shift towards easier, more native out-of-the-box solutions was the point I wanted to go across.
So Glenn definitely has a spy inside the product marketing team talking about an axis where you could rationalize what integrations to do next, because that is something we've been working on as a resource for our customers, which will be released as part of our series of regional masterclasses over the course of the year. So there you go. So if you were thinking about signing up for a masterclass, you just now had a sneak peek into one of the resources you might get if you attend, or will get if you attend, because it's been something that we've been modeling out, an actual kind of system where you can plug in some very fancy, helpful numbers to kind of plot all your different integrations into a graph of importance and ease to achieve. So Glenn has stolen that thunder, but that is still a great reason to sign up for
Great minds think alike. Great minds.
Shameless plug. Regional masterclasses coming to a city near you soon. Right, and with that, we're coming up to time to wrap things up. Final thing from each of you, and I'm going to throw to Carrie first. Can you give us one thing, your one major takeaway in regards to key trends people should pay attention to in 2022? Carrie first.
Well, it is that automation, but again, making that automation more human, and integrating, social aspects and individual user styles, and also, big career opportunity for people who do governance on those tools.
Yes, absolutely. Don't let the robots run wild. It will be the death of us all. Okay, over to you, Leslie. What was your one key thing you've learned or that you think is most important as a trend for 2022?
I think incorporating digital platforms into your onboarding experience and making sure that there's opportunity for people to learn about the business from the very beginning and participate in the business from the very beginning is going to be really key, because we're all in this hybrid, maybe full-time remote positions. And so that's going to be a big piece of the focus for people looking for new jobs. How do I get in, how do I get involved? How do I get onboarded? What's that onboarding process, and what are my tools to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. No one wants to walk in and not know where to go, who to talk to, or have any kind of guidance. And it's all digital now. So onboarding, great one. Shavaz, over to you. What is your big, the big takeaway?
My big takeaway for the future of work in 2022 is I think that everything is going to be very focused on value. And is the business providing value to the employees? Are the employees providing value to the business? Are the comms team providing value to the employee experience overall? And I think it's just in all of that, of course, focused on customer centricity. So I think that it's just going to be all about value in a human connection kind of just way, I guess.
A whole new way to think about productivity, maybe start focusing less on, things people get done.
On quantity, but quality.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Good one. Focus on the value that people are bringing. And then finally, last but by no means least, Glenn, what is the most important trend for 2022 for the future of work?
I want to sort of ignore you and do something different, because I thought of something really important that we didn't discuss. I think a really big focus for 22, the other one we didn't talk about, was there's a big focus on intranet for all. And I mean like all your employees, and not just Frontline and desktop, which has been focused on a lot, but in any country. So, in any language, but also huge more focus on accessibility, making sure that the WCAG 2.1, is in place. So just inclusive intranets that meet the needs of the entire organization, not just part.
That is, do you know what? I'll allow it. That's very good. A very good final point from Glenn. It's acceptable. So, well, and that's all we've got time for. I can't believe it. The time on these podcasts just absolutely disappears. If you've been listening, thank you so much for joining us. We always love to have people checking out our content. Thank you to all of our experts today. Our expert podcast speakers have shared all their thoughts and insights. Do check out unily.com for other events and case studies and loads of other material that you'll probably find useful if you're focused on employee experience and how to improve it in 2022. And for now, we'll say goodbye, but hopefully we will see you on the next one. Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Matt.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.